My fellow Americans, Governor Ronald Reagan.
Well, the views seem to be mainly dissatisfaction with the administration in Washington. And I would say that from what I've learned from the Republicans traveling around the country, no one can take first place over the Republicans in being dissatisfied with what's going on in the country today. But I believe that the greatest opportunity for changing the flavor of the government in Washington lies with the Republican Party, and I don't believe a third-party movement can do anything but strengthen the hand of the Democrats.
We're despised abroad and divided at home. And I think the American people have come to one of those moments of choosing, one of those times that are the salvation of our nation, when things can only get so bad. And then the American people say, if I can call upon some of my colleagues in California, some of our good Californians of Mexican descent have an expression, ya basta. We've had it. And I think we have had it with what's going on. I think the pretense that we have peace and prosperity at home, while some young Americans are fighting and dying for their country, is something that makes every American feel guilty in his heart. That we believe that any time we ask a young man to fight and die for his country, the rest of us have a moral obligation to do everything possible to win that war and get it over with as quickly as possible and bring them home.
You do, in fact, oppose a movement by the Democrats and Republicans to, so to speak, stop George Wallace.
While I don't believe in a third-party movement, and I don't believe that splinter parties have ever succeeded in doing any or really accomplishing what they set out to accomplish, I don't believe in some kind of gimmickry between the two major parties, which then starts a precedent of trying to shut the others out. My disagreement with the present third-party movement here is that it is based on the idea of wanting a change in the present administration in Washington. And if past history is any indication, the only times we've really known such an effort, they have only succeeded in electing a Democratic administration. They did it back in 1912 with the Bull Moose movement. They did it again in 1948, when again there was dissatisfaction with the administration in Washington, and the several states in the South chose to go a third-party route, again out of opposition to that administration, and it was reelected. And I believe that today a third-party movement will disenfranchise many people. It's true they will be able to register a protest against the present administration, but I doubt that they will be able to succeed in getting a change of policy there. Obviously, this kind of thing, again, focuses attention on the dissatisfaction of the, what I've called the permissive policies of the present administration. How to prevent it? Well, I don't believe anymore that we can consider this type of thing as a spontaneous outburst on the part of people with legitimate grievances who are complaining that nothing is being done about their grievances. I think this is insurrection. I think it is planned, I think it is deliberate, and I don't think it's associated with civil rights in any way. As a matter of fact, I think the leaders of this type of thing, for the most part, are betraying the very people they claim to represent. They are grinding their own axe under whatever banner they may erect. And I say it begins with the enforcement of every law. There is no legitimate excuse for anyone taking the law into his own hands, violating even the laws under the guise of civil disobedience. And once it comes to the streets in riot and bloodshed, Government has a responsibility to protect the citizen's property, to enforce the law, and take whatever force is necessary to enforce the law and bring about peace and order.
Ronald Reagan, Governor of California.
Seems only yesterday that we were hearing all the way with LBJ, and now we know what he meant. And as each plan fails, they've added another on top of it until today it takes a catalog we've just received in Sacramento of 750 pages to list all the ways they have of helping the less fortunate. Sometimes you wonder if there'd be a poverty pocket if the government would take its hand out of it. But when we criticize their failure to solve these problems, you know what the answer is. Always and automatically they charge that we're selfish. We're opposed to the noble purpose. Well, in this election year, let's answer them once and for all. Let's tell them that we're opposed not to the noble purpose, but we're opposed to continuing programs that are proven failures. We're opposed to referring to Americans, our fellow citizens, as the masses. We're opposed to a welfare program that perpetuates poverty under the second and third generation of some of the families that started out receiving the dole. We're opposed to creating a federal plantation where an ever-increasing number of people live without hope or self-respect. But at the same time, we're for something. We're for recognizing that these people they would refer to as the masses are individuals, unique as each one of us is as unique, and that they're crying out in their hearts for a chance to have the human dignity which is their birthright in this nation. Let us also tell them that we're for doing whatever is necessary to salvage human beings, but we're going to stop destroying them.
They've thrown out, and we've seen it most dearly here in the state of Alabama, the freedom of choice in our schools. They have denied our children the first right of every single American, the story of America, the freedom to choose. It's time to take our courts out of politics and make those, the federal judges or any judge, realize that we the people still constitute the American government.
How then do we answer the discontent in our land, the discontent with the leadership that has failed? Certainly not by turning to those who have been part and parcel of the failure. And if we believe the lessons of history, not by throwing our vote away in a futile protest. In Europe, we've seen great nations. In Europe, we've seen great nations become impotent and weak as splinter parties came into being only to express more exactly some individuals' views as to what should be changed. In our own land, the Bull Moose Party in 1912 split the Republicans and elected Woodrow Wilson. 20 years ago, 1948, there was disaffection with the Democratic leadership in Washington. A candidate far over on the left siphoned away from the Democrats the ultra-liberals, and a third party, particularly here in the South, registered its protest against the Democratic leadership with a third party, or perhaps call it fourth party, I don't know which one started first. And all they did was neutralize themselves, and the Democratic administration returned to power. Those of you who are Democrats and who yearn as you must for your party's return to the philosophy that is polarized around a belief in the constitutional limits and the power of government, on local autonomy and individual freedom and fiscal responsibility, you can only realize your dream of recapturing the leadership of your party by repudiating the present leadership and electing others to office.
Put out any in campaign between now and the election?
No, McAllen is Charlie, I don't know of any bickering going on. It's not going on between me and anybody.
What are you most proud of concerning your record on the Public Service Commission?
That I haven't voted to raise anybody's rates. The power company and the telephone company both been to try to get the rates raised, and I voted against both. I just heard a case yesterday. I haven't voted on it yet, Charlie. I got to talk it over with the other two commissioners. The railroad's trying to raise the rates on freight. I don't know what I'm going to do on that until I talk to the other two commissioners. When I came down there, Charlie, they were voting on such as that without even talking to each other. I didn't think that was right, because I may have my mind set one way and the other two commissioners one way, and I get there or they might change my mind. Try to be fair is the only way I know how to run it.
Commissioner, what do you think is the attitude of the people toward the job that the Public Service Commission has to do?
Charlie, I don't know. I found this out since I've been here, though. I'm afraid the public in Alabama takes the Public Service Commission for granted. They don't take it. They got no interest in it. I don't believe, the people. They don't realize the responsibility that's on the shoulders of your three Public Service Commissioners. For instance, Charlie, last week we heard a case where the Birmingham Transit Company is asking for a raise in rate. Not a person from Birmingham appeared in front of us against this. Not a member of the commission, the mayor or nobody, appeared down here against the raise rate. Now, if we refuse that rate, we are heroes. But if we give them that rate raise, we are sheroes, I reckon you'd call it, Charlie.
Democratic Party of Alabama. Are you going to be able to get out much to do any campaign?
No, Charlie, I haven't been able to go. Our calendar's too full of it. I've got hearings I've got to attend. I haven't missed a hearing.
I've challenged him to a debate, and I'll continue to challenge him to a debate because the issues are too great in America to walk away from them. And I say to you right here and now, if you can't speak out on the issues in the state of Alabama, you'll never be able to speak out on the issues in Washington, D.C. If you're going to hide behind a rock or a log in the state of Alabama, when you get to Washington, D.C., you're going to hide behind a log or a rock there. If you're going to play hide-and-seek politics in Alabama, you're going to play hide-and-seek politics in Washington, D.C.
The big issue is who is going to control the Congress. My opponent says, I'm an Alabama Democrat. Great, wonderful. He can be a hyphenated anything he wants to. What is an Alabama Democrat? Now, you might have them here, and you might be able to recognize them. We don't have them in Washington, D.C., gentlemen. There are Democrats and Republicans up there, and when they count heads to see who controls the Congress, you sit on one side or you sit on the other. There are no chairs in the aisle. You're a Democrat or you're a Republican. And there's never been a Democrat yet that voted for a Republican Speaker of the House or chairman of any of the committees up there. Same thing. We all work according to our talents, our energies, and our capabilities.
I do want to urge the City Commission to consider the Parks Commission reorganization and reactivation, and I hope that we will begin to consider a beautification and tree commission, something like I've discussed with Commissioner Evans similar to the Mobile program, where they've got a commission that primarily concerns himself with the beauty of the city.
I am considering very much, Mr. Fowler, perhaps next week, and I will introduce a resolution that before trees are cut on public right-of-ways, that it will be an act of the three city commissioners, unless it's in case of emergency. When I call, say, in case of emergency that endangers human lives and different things, then of course naturally we'll have to go on out and take care of it.
I'd like to bring forward the commission this time. Come right up.
I decided in January, and I sided on the National Democratic Party of Alabama Labor because I felt that the old line Democratic Party had failed the people in the state of Alabama, and that they had aligned themselves with the Dixiecrat movement and had disassociated themselves with the National Democratic Party of the state of the United States of America. And I feel that if we're going to be successful in the South and in Alabama, we must align ourselves with the Democratic machinery on a national level. And therefore I decided to run for a Public Service Commission of the state of Alabama, and I felt that I could do a much better job than those who have been in this office the past years, because the office has been too far away from the people. I think this office ought to be as close as the people themselves, and that is on the local level. So far as service is concerned, the small towns, incorporated, non-incorporated. The big cities, I think nobody ought to have an advantage over the other. The Alabama Power Company and many other large companies such as Alabama Gas ought to give the same, they ought to give the same type of service. This office ought to give the same type of service to these people as it do to the smaller people in the state of Alabama.
Do you feel that the Public Service Commission needs changes at this time?
I think there should be some service. And these services, I would mention at least two. Number one, I both stated that I think the office is too far away from the people. I think we ought to bring it down so that it would be a service to the people. And number two, I feel that large competitive companies and large municipalities have the advantage over the little towns and cities in the state of Alabama. And I think better service can be performed in that direction. I feel I'm capable of doing that. I'm a school teacher. I have been all over the state of Alabama. I've seen good service rendered, of course, by this administration, but I think it still can be better.
Why did you decide to run against Eugene Bull Connor for the office?
First place, Mr. Connor's a fine man. His health isn't as good as it ought to be, and I feel that a younger man ought to come in and take over. And secondly, I feel that he is a part of the power structure that be, and he has disassociated himself from the common man in the state of Alabama.
My basic plan, I feel like that some of the problems that we've had with the Public Service Commission, and these problems have existed for such a long period of time, that I feel like the best thing for the interest of the people of Alabama would be to abolish the present Public Service Commission. And when I say abolish the commission, I'm not speaking of the employees that work at the Public Service Commission, but I'm speaking of the three commissioners that are serving on the Public Service Commission. Abolish these three jobs, and I might add, by the way, this would save the taxpayers something over $150,000 in a 4-year period, and abolish it and replace it with a Public Utilities Board. And this board, by law, would consist of one elected member from each congressional district. And by law, this board would have to meet in each congressional district once a year to hear complaints and to check into matters such as your telephone service, your utility rates, your transportation rates. Give the public a right to be heard instead of just going up there holding a hearing and just hearing the utilities and the transportation companies and the telephone companies' side of the story. The people have a right, when they have a complaint, to let it be heard and have someone, and set the commission up so that if you have a basis for real solid complaints from the public, send a representative from the Public Service Commission out to investigate the complaint. I don't know where you are aware of it now, but under the present Public Service Commission setup, if you have a complaint about your power bill, your telephone rate, you call the Public Service Commission, they in turn call the utility, and the utility goes out and investigates it. Well, now, whose side do you think the complaint's going to be decided upon?
Well, Carl, we came out last week's ball game in pretty good shape, I'll tell you this. So the Murphy group really hit us, and we've got a lot of aches and pains, but overall we feel like that we'll have all our boys, barring any unseen accident this week, to be ready for Dothan, and you can believe me that we're going to certainly have to have all of our forces. This group has a tremendous ball club. They got some outstanding individuals, but offensively and defensively they're real tough, and I think that their feeling towards Montgomery was shown by their league game, and I know that nothing would make them feel any better than to come up here and spoil our record, because several years ago we were fortunate enough to bump them off when they were having a real outstanding year. This ball game will be played in the bowl. I know on a lot of schedules it said in Dothan, but the ball game will be played here at the bowl, and certainly we hope that everybody will turn out to see them, because they have a real outstanding runner, and this boy named Steve Wade. He's a brother of the one that's at Alabama. Got a real outstanding quarterback in Atkins. He's runs about a 9.8, has terrific speed, throws the ball real well, and they've got a lot of other folks to go with them. So the Ports will have their hands full this Friday night at the bowl. Hope you'll all be there.
Mr. Nixon and Mr. Wallace really does not offer to the people the programs that would benefit all concerned, the various ethnic groups that must be represented from this level. I think that the only hope of the people at this point is Mr. Humphrey, even though some may disagree with that. He would be my choice of candidate.
Since your party was only put on the ballot by the U.S. Supreme Court only last week, what type of campaign have you been able to conduct in such a short period of time?
Well, I've been able to get out into the community in terms of the mass meeting groups that have gathered to hear the information that we have to bring to them in reference to the campaign. We have been contacting several ministers in key areas in the 2nd Congressional District, and we're going to accelerate that program in the next few days. It's going to be much more intensive than we have been doing since we have this time limit.
What kind of support do you expect to receive from the Negro leaders throughout the 2nd District?
Well, it is my hope that we will be received, the National Democratic Party will be received pretty favorably in these counties. From all the indications I've gotten, it seems to be doing pretty well. We feel that we are the choice for these counties, and that the only way they will be able to exercise the democratic process is through our candidacy in the National Democratic Party. So we feel that it's going to be pretty good. November the 5th will tell it.
You stated that you plan to conduct quite an intensive campaign between now and Election Day. What source of funds do you now have for your campaigning?
Well, I've been drawing from various businessmen in the area, and
I've gotten quite a few contributions from connections that I have across the United States, Washington, Florida, and other places. And we're hoping that enough money will come in to take care of whatever comes up. Things are looking pretty well from where I stand now.